Okay, today we're working on the Tige Z3. We're doing the steering cable. And I'm just going to go through the procedure that I use to change out the steering cable. So first off, you're going to need a new steering cable. This is the new one. Towards the end, this is what connects into the rudder. The piece down there connects into behind the steering wheel, so the cable kind of runs through the boat. But towards the end of the cable, there's a number on the boat, or on the cable here. If you see here, there's a number. The last two numbers are the length in feet. So you basically want to just order the same size that you have currently in the boat. So if you look down in the bottom of the bilge of the boat, you can see the cable, and sometimes you can see the size. So mine had an existing 22-foot cable. This was the one I ordered. So ordered the same size. I ordered the SSCX 15422. This is the Extreme. There's two versions, so if you see it says Extreme. The Extreme has a little more lubrication in it, and it's got a thicker jacket, so that way it'll last a little longer. It's less susceptible to corrosion and getting hard to steer like the symptoms are right now. So you can get either one. The Extreme ones are a little bit more expensive. I paid like $165 from this. Found it on eBay. So you're gonna pay between $150 to $250 for a new steering cable. I'm not sure what the labor is on this. I would guess they charge you 3-4 hours of labor, so I'd probably be $200-$400 to replace this. So it's worth doing yourself if you can, if you have the time and tools to do so. I'm going to go through the procedure that I use, and hopefully it's helpful. Okay, first step, we're under the steer. So here's the steering wheel. We're under the dash. You see this black rack? That's the end of the steering cable that hooks into the steering wheel. So there's 4 bolts on top of here that we're going to remove. That'll release this part, and if you see how this cable goes, it actually goes back up through there, down and around through there. So basically we need to get this off first by just removing those 4 bolts. Okay, I'm just going to use a pneumatic ratchet here, but the size is 7/16 bolt on this, so just the 4 bolts. Back those out, and you'll be able to take off this black part. Okay, these are the 4 bolts. Just got those out. Each of them have a washer on them. So now that I have those out, I can now disconnect the steering mechanism. Okay, if you see here, I can now disconnect this. So those teeth connect into the teeth of this steering wheel, and that's how when you turn, it moves this back and forth. So I can move this down. Okay, now that I have the rack down, I'm going to share with you, this is something I've done a few times to get these steering cables out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my bolt cutters out, and I'm going to cut off the cable right here, and I'll tell you why. Alright, I have my bolt cutters here. I'm going to cut off this steering rack right here. And then what you can do is once you have this off, you can tape on a piece of rope, and then you can pull it through the bilge to snake the rope through. Okay, we have the steering cable, the steering rack here cut off. Now what I'm doing is I'm taping on a rope to the end of the steering cable. So what I do is I'm going to pull it through the bilge once I get it disconnected from there, from the rudder arm, and I'm going to pull it through so I have a rope, so that way I can pull the new steering cable that way back through the same direction. Now that's one way. The other way, I think I'm actually going to do how I'm going to route the new steering cable is I'm going to go down the side of the gunnel. You see here, so the steering rack sits up here, okay, and then the original route, if you see here, the cable goes up through, this is towards the front of the boat, around and down under the gas tank. So I'm going to actually route the steering cable down the gunnel. See down there, that's the ballast bag in the rear. I'm going to run the cable down this side all the way down, and then it's going to go into the bilge towards the back. I did this before on another boat and it worked out great because you don't have to worry about the gas tank and you don't have to worry. I actually damaged a steering cable before trying to pull it through under the gas tank. It's just a hassle. So I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to secure it to the side of the gunnel, and then it's just going to cut into the bilge. So I'll show you how that's done. Okay, here at the back of the boat, got the engine hatch open, both side hatches open. And on this is a Tige, a Z3. The rudder arm faces the port side. Okay, so you need to access it from this side. So there's normally a panel here. I removed that panel. And I'm going to remove the batteries just because you have to get access down under the motor back towards the back of the boat to be able to disconnect the steering cable from the rudder. So there's just a few screws. Just these top 2 screws there. There's some screws along the side of the panel on this side, and then on the bottom you remove those and you can take that panel out. And then take the batteries out. Just make sure, I'm going to mark which battery cables go on which battery just so there's no confusion putting it back. Once you have that open, it's going to be a lot more space to get access to the steering rudder. Alright, I have the batteries removed. Got each of the battery cables labeled so I know which goes where. So with the batteries removed, you have decent access to the rudder and the steering cable down here. So if you see, there's our rudder arm. See how it's facing the port side? We just need to get a light on it here. Alright, what we need to do now is we need to remove that bolt there. That disconnects the steering cable from the rudder arm. And then, okay, I'm just getting ready to take this bolt off the steering cable. This side of it is 9/16. The nut on that side is 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to use the air wrench to back that off and then hold it with an open-ended wrench on this side. That's the bolt we got out. So just the nut. Remember, that's a 1/2 inch. This is 9/16. There's a washer on that side. So if you can see, we removed it there. Now we're just going to get that clamping block off. If you can see there, this clamping block is secured onto that metal mount there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to loosen. So you need like 2 open-ended wrenches, like 2 crescent wrenches. So one to put on that bolt and then one to hold that from spinning. We want this whole mount to come out. That way we can mount it directly onto the new steering cable. So yeah, just get your 2 crescent wrenches and take that off so that way this whole clamp comes out. It's going to be easier to disassemble it when it's out of the boat instead of trying to do it while it's in. So I'm just working this nut loose here until it comes off. That will release the clamp. Okay, I got that to break free, so the bolt's still in there. This is loosened up. So now the steering cable is free. Now I just need to pull it through the entire boat and reassemble for the new one. Alright, I have the seat and gas tank cover up so I can see and kind of get this cable out. But I found the cable goes along the side underneath the gas tank, and it's going to be virtually impossible to pull it out the same way. So what I did is I cut it right here so that way I can pull out this end out the back. This end I can pull up, most likely I can pull out through the dash. And if you're going to run it back this way, it's going to have to go over the top of the gas tank and down into the bilge. So I don't think there's any way to get it back along the side. I think they install it in the factory from that steering cable first, and they put the gas tank on top of it. So that steering cable has a nut on it, and there's no way to really get it by through that area again. So running a rope through there is not going to be terribly helpful. So running it back this way, it's just going to have to go on top of the gas tank. So now I'm just going to pull the back part of the cable out, and then I'm going to pull the front part out now that it's cut in half. See here, now that I have it kind of cut in half, I can now pull it out. So I've got more slack to do that. Really what we want is we want this part out. So what we're going to do now that we have this part out is we need to take this nut off. This nut comes with the new steering cable. And then we'll pull this the steering cable here pulls through, and then we'll reconnect the new steering cable to this shaft once we get it through. So Okay, here's just a comparison. So here's the old cable out. Here's the new one. So here's the new one. It's got the nut on it, just like this one does. There's a tube here. That's what this thing's clamped onto. So what we do is when we remove that nut, we'll be able to pull the old cable through. Once we get the new cable slid into the bilge, we'll be able to slide it through this tube and tighten the nut on it. Okay, what I'm doing now is I just got a piece of wood. I'm just bracing this so it doesn't move. And then I'm just loosening this nut up. Luckily, it's not corroded. It's coming off. It's moving. So what I'm doing is I'm just standing on this board and then loosening this nut off. So sometimes this can get corroded on there if it's been on there too long. But luckily, so that means we can reuse this tube, which is great because we don't have to replace it. So I'm going to take the nut off, slide the old cable out. Okay, got the nut loose. Now we're just pulling the old cable through. Okay, that's our old cable here. So this part of the steering cable assembly we're going to reuse. So what we're going to do, once we get the new cable routed through under the bilge, we're going to put the new cable through here and be able to tie into the rudder. The nice thing with not having to take this off is that way you don't have to try to reline this back up. So if you leave it clamped on, you slide the new cable through, it's going to be lined up exactly as it should. Okay, if you can see, these are just the markings on the old cable. SSC 13422, so 22-foot cable. So we're replacing it with the same size. Okay, we're back into the dash here. We have the new cable run up here. So we have, this is the new steering portion. I just have these screws in hand tight just to hold it here. And we're routing it down the side of the gunnel. So if you see, it's going here. And then down the side of the gunnel. The old cable, if you see up here, this is where I cut it off right here. I'm just leaving that there. So from there all the way to the fuel tank, the old cable is just going to stay there. The clearance is so tight there, to get a new cable through there would just be so hard. So I'm just running it down here. Okay, down the side. I'm gonna, that plastic thing that says, let's say 610A, I'm gonna run the cable on top of that, and then it's gonna sneak into the bilge just after that. Okay, this is the seat right behind the driver. If you see here, we have the cable actually run up above. It's going above this cup holder area. That's that plastic thing that said 610A on it. It's going to go above that. And then it's going to come out right where that rubber hose that you can see right there is. And then it's going to hang a right-hand turn right into the bilge where all those hoses are. So it's actually kind of set up perfect for it. Okay, back here in the engine compartment, this is where the cable's coming through. Right there you can see the dark shiny cable. That's our steering cable, so it's coming kind of around the bench, coming through there, and then I'll route it down into the bilge. Okay, this is the starboard compartment. I just want to show where the cable's coming through. So the cable's coming down from the front there, comes around here, just zip tied onto the fuel hose there, and then goes in to the compartment right there, into the bilge. Okay, I have the new hose that's coming through here, and it's ready to go straight back to the rudder. Now I just need to put on that sleeve and secure it to the nut here, and then we can get it re-secured. Okay, I have the sleeve on there. I'm just going to tighten up the nut. Okay, we have the nut tightened. Now we're just going to run it straight back to the rudder arm, and we'll be able to secure it onto the bracket and the rudder. Alright, I'm just getting it snaked back there, right through the ballast and the intake hoses here. Go back into the back part and then pull it through. Okay, I have it routed here. Now all I have to do is just screw this nut back into here, and then we'll get this hooked into the rudder. Okay, for reference sake, remember you need a open-ended wrench on this side, and then the nut on this side is actually 3/4 inch, so you can get a socket on that. Use the air ratchet to ratchet it down. Makes it easier since there's not a lot of clearance to get like a ratchet up and down. The air ratchet works good, or an electric ratchet. Okay, the next part, we just have to put the screw back in there, tighten that down. Okay, this is a 1/2 inch on this nut, and then 9/16 socket here to hold, or a wrench to hold that while we're tightening it down. Okay, now we've got that tightened down, we're going to go back up to the helm, tighten the bolts down on the steering rack. All right, back under the helm here. Here's the steering wheel control. We've got these screws manually just kind of hand tight down. It's a 7/16 head, so I'm just going to use a socket and a wrench to get those tightened down. It'll be all buttoned up under the dash. So you can see here I just zip tied the steering cable at the top of the gunnel. There's some other ones, you can see a few zip ties there. Then it sneaks into the bilge just on where other hoses and wires go through. So this is actually a really easy way to get it down there. Okay, we got the cable in, everything's secured. Now I just got to put the batteries back in the back, put the plastic wall in, secure everything, clean everything up. It's good to go. All right, guys, just wrapping up here. So these are actually the two parts of the old cable that came out of the boat. So I cut this off at the helm. This came out, and then I cut this down by the fuel tank, so I get this rear part out. But the rest of the old cable I left in there just because I didn't go the same route that the old cable went. So I wasn't gonna fight getting the old cable out. It's just in the bilge, up in the dash. But hopefully this is helpful, if nothing more entertaining for you. You know, I like tinkering on my own boats. I'm not a boat mechanic, so I'm sure I'm going to take some heat on how I routed the cable. But ultimately, as long as it gets back to the rudder, that's what you're looking for. And it was a lot easier than trying to go down through the bilge. So thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Thank you very much.